Hello, lovelies. Cory here. Welcome back. So I wanted to pop on here just to chat, mostly about, witchcraft in general, and just kind of have like a chat with you guys. As I'm recording this, it's like 11 o'clock at night. The kids are in bed. The hubby's upstairs doing whatever he's doing, probably video games. And I felt the need to come in here and record. It's been a while since I've been in a rhythm with recording videos for you guys, so just kind of wanted to jump back in by touching on building your own craft tradition, right? So this topic's been swirling around in my head for a little while, just because there's been a lot going on in our community. It's been a lot of discussions, a lot of good discussions, a lot of heated discussions, and then a lot of those conversations have also taken a dark turn, a turn that I didn't think we would take. But it really got me thinking as to my origin story, how I started practicing, why I became a witch, and what that means. And what that means to you and to our community as a whole. I think that there are as many ways to practice witchcraft as there are witches in the world. Witchcraft is not beholden to any one particular culture. It's pretty universal. You'll find my tradition, if you will, although it's family, it's personal, it's very folky. My way of practicing witchcraft relies heavily or draws heavily from my ancestry, my Norse and Celtic and English roots. And, your craft practice may do the same. It's kind of a general good place to start is your heritage and ancestry. So if you feel called to the path of the witch, you're kind of like wondering what the hell this is all about. Is this something that's for me? Is this a pathway for me? Number one, if you're along those lines of thinking, then yes, it's for you. I had a hard time when I was younger with coming to terms with the fact that this path was for me. Everyone around me, my family, friends, were all guiding me in a very specific direction, their direction. And I was being dragged along this path, kicking and screaming, because I wanted to go over here. I felt really called to the path of the witch. And I didn't understand why. Because in the context of the world that I grew up in, witches weren't real. All I had to draw from was what I had seen in movies, TV shows, cartoons. These were caricatures. And that's not real, right? I wouldn't be able to snap my fingers, wave a wand and say Aloha Mora and have a door unlock for me. This, wasn't the reality that I lived in. And yet, I felt this longing, this call, this feeling that there was something real and tangible there. That there was something to all of this witchcraft stuff that was real, that could be felt, that could be experienced, that could be seen and heard. But I had nobody around me to draw from. You know, this was the 90s. The internet was still really new. Not everybody had a home computer. Not everybody's home computer hooked up to the internet. My first computer was a Tandy. I don't know if any of you guys know what a Tandy is, but think big beige box, black screen, green letters. Back in the days when floppy disks were actually floppy. I'm dating myself here. I get it. But this was the reality that I lived in. You know, I remember picking up my first book on witchcraft. It was a Scott Cunningham book. And it was Earth, Air, Fire, and Water. I see it on my bookshelf over there. Of course, I wouldn't buy it for like another 10 years. But I remember being in a Crown's bookstore. Do you remember those? And this was before Barnes & Noble. And I picked up this book. It was about 10 years old. And I read the back cover and I was like, this isn't real. This is real. This isn't real. And I remember reading the first couple pages, the introduction, and I was just like, I was floored. I was floored. And I knew, being in like the 5th grade, my parents aren't gonna let me buy this book. No way. My Lutheran traditional parents, the hell. And so I didn't buy it. I couldn't. I didn't have my own money even at the time. You know, my family didn't have allowances. We couldn't really afford that. My sister and I just did chores because we were supposed to. It's just how it worked in my neighborhood. And so I didn't get it. But that was kind of the start of my search. Looking around, seeing what little tidbits of information I could pick up. When we finally got a computer that had internet access, dial up. Lord, nobody could be using the phone while you were online. If they picked up the phone, they kicked you off the internet. The trials and tribulations of growing up in the 90s. And, you know, you had the few pages you did find were just scrolling text, HTML, the glitter GIFs. And, you know, a lot of the information was the same. You know, now looking back on it, this was information regurgitated from Scott and from Raymond Buckland and from Starhawk. You know, it was the same pieces of information, just rehashed in a different format. So all of the websites were pretty much the same. You had Witchvox, which was actually a huge blessing because different folks could write articles, provide their take on things, but a lot of it was still very guarded. You know, there wasn't a lot of information being exchanged freely. And a lot of it came strictly from the perspective of Wicca or Druidry. You know, you had access strictly to Western European traditions, which benefited me because that's my ancestry. But any other folks who were, you know, if your ancestry was, you know, if your ancestors came from Argentina, there weren't a lot of, you know, craft websites that discussed any indigenous craft practices, right? They were all primarily Celtic in nature. That was a huge drawback for being an inclusive community, for sure. So there were drawbacks to growing up at that state, in that age. information wasn't as readily available as it is now. A lot of it was repeated, borrowed, stolen in some cases. And really, the few books that you had, some of them were quite goofy. The first books that I started with were books by Silver Ravenwolf. So I took the pathway of being called to witchcraft by the goddess. So for me, I consider myself a eclectic Wiccan. I do incorporate, I have a lot of pagan beliefs, and for the most part, I've remained fairly steadfast in being a Wiccan, although I think my beliefs more just lean towards the pagan. And in fact, for the first few years that I practiced, I referred to myself as a pagan and not as a Wiccan, because I didn't necessarily believe in I believed in the law of three, the rule of three, but I disagreed in part with the Wiccanry. And I'll explain that. That might have to be another video, to be perfectly honest with you. A whole lot to unpack with the Wiccanry. And this video isn't really about religion, you know, because witchcraft is a practice. You do not need to be Wiccan to be a witch, obviously. As I had mentioned, you find witchcraft in cultures all over the world, tied to religion, not tied to religion. Witchcraft is a practice. It is hard not to be spiritual in nature, but it's not overtly spiritual or religious. The idea of witchcraft, to me, and what it means to me, witchcraft is the art of directing energy for a specific purpose. Okay, you have an intention held in your mind. You can gather ingredients with associations that support your intention or not. You need no tools to actually practice witchcraft. You raise up your energy from the earth. You can raise it from yourself. We can talk about that in another video if you'd like. You know, it's raised from the earth, combination with ingredients that you throw together, and so you raise all this energy and then you release it. And you release it out into the universe to do what you intended to do. It's wrapped up in your purpose. You infuse your purpose into that energy and you just let it out into the universe to do what you intended to do. And if you've held focus and raised enough energy and then obviously put into motion, you know, the actions that you need to take to help fulfill your intention, then your magic will be successful. And that's the thing that really drew me to witchcraft, is the empowerment that I'm actively, through my magic, through my craft practice, saying to the universe, this is what I want to happen. This is what I want to manifest for myself or my family. This is what I want to birth into the world. And then taking the action of drawing up this amount of energy and sending it out. You know, for the first time, and for a kid who felt like she didn't have any sort of control in her life whatsoever. Coming to this path gave me the reins back over my life. It allowed me to say, you know what? This is going to go how I want it to go. Now, obviously, free will comes into play. There are other things at work here. You know, there's energies interacting with, in some cases, counteracting energy. Not everything works out. I've done plenty of spells that just just did not come to pass. The end result did not turn out the way I had intended it to. And in a lot of those cases, the reason for that was because I didn't hold clear enough intention. Either I wasn't focused enough on what I was doing and I kind of half-assed it, or I was holding too many intentions. You know, part of my craft practice is having to actually be very focused. You know, putting myself into what it is that I'm doing. I'm a Virgo. I'm very detail oriented. Shit's got to be right. It's just got to be right. So if it doesn't go right, then my brain starts to unravel what didn't go right and undoes all of that magical work. So when it comes to craft practice, you know, folks have asked me like kind of where to start. And I made a post on social media today. Start where you are. Start where you are. What you have on hand, what you happen to know. Start with your ancestry. As I mentioned earlier, is a good place to start. But just take a step. You know, the idea of practicing witchcraft can seem very overwhelming if you've never done it. It's this big thing of, how do I know if I'm doing it right? Where do I start? What's the correct way to do this? You know, you're constantly questioning yourself and asking yourself, am I ready to do this? Am I ready? And I guess the answer, or the truth of the matter, is that no one's ever really 100% ready. You just gotta trust that if you're feeling that call, if you're feeling that whisper, that nagging sensation in the back of your head saying, you should do this, and it feels right. You know, like, this is what I'm supposed to do. Then the time to start is just now, where you are, as you are, come as you are. Because witchcraft isn't about perfection. As much as my Virgo sun, it's like, the hell it isn't. It really isn't, okay? Witchcraft is not about perfection. It's about action. It is about stepping in to who you are now and who you want to be, and taking steps towards that. It's about connecting yourself to your environment, to the world around you, to the universe even, to your ancestry, your lineage. It's about connection and action. So if I give you any piece of advice or any pieces of advice, I guess the first one would be, and it's boring as hell, and I tell everyone this, but I stand by it, it's read everything. Read anything and everything you can get your hands on, and read it with a discerning eye. Because, as I'd mentioned, one of the first authors that I came in contact with and read a lot was Silver Ravenwolf. Now, there's a whole lot to unpack just with that author, but I will tell you now that I'm actually very glad that I started with her, because it showed me a lot of things up front about the Wiccan community specifically that aren't pretty, that are very condescending and judgmental. If I recommend authors to you, you'll notice in a lot of my lists, she's not on it. And a big part of that is because there's a lot of techniques that she incorporates that are appropriating, and just her vibration, the way that she comes across in her text, as I had mentioned, is just a very condescending way. She almost looks down on anyone who doesn't practice the way she practices. Just leave it at that. So as far as reading, there are hundreds upon hundreds of blogs all over the internet. Some are good, some are all right, some are crap. So when it comes to reading, right, just take everything with a grain of salt, even what I say, okay? If something that I mentioned in one of my videos is like sounding off alarms for you that this isn't right for you in your practice, by all means, don't do it. You know, I don't ever want anyone to take a technique or information that I say as, you know, gospel. There's a reason why, you know, witches write their own book of shadows, their own book of methods, their own grimoires. We write those because that's what's true for us. That's our truth and how we practice. And I know that makes it harder for folks coming into this practice because there isn't a handy-dandy witchcraft manual for all. There just isn't. There isn't a one-size-fits-all user manual when it comes to witchcraft. So that's where that's where the multitude of reading comes in. You can use, you know, I know that there are a lot of different kind of almost library-like applications online. I haven't used a whole lot of them, but there are ways for you to rent or borrow books from authors, kind of check them out electronically, read them on your phone, your computer, you know, your iPad, Kindle, whatever you have, and, you know, save your pennies that way. Honestly, as I had mentioned earlier in the video, the only thing that you need to practice witchcraft is you. You're going to see a lot of tools. You're going to see a lot of ingredients. I have a shitload of them, you know, but I've also been collecting these, you know, items over the last almost 20 years now. For a lot of these things, because I was even gathering a lot of them before I formally started practicing, you know, before I cast my first spell, if you will. So a lot of books that I have are really old. In fact, the covers, if they've been reprinted, don't look like these anymore. But authors that I would recommend for you as far as witchcraft, and not just Wicca, although you'll find some Wiccan elements in there. Sorry guys, that comes with the nature of my practice. So as far as the way that I practice, and just kind of starting off with witchcraft in general, Raven Grimasi is an amazing author. I don't think that I can talk about his work enough and how influential it's been on me. The Witch's Craft, love that book. Spirit of the Witch is another great one. In fact, he has a book, Crafting Your Wiccan Traditions, which you're like, Cory, that's too Wiccan. I mean, it has Wiccan in the title. However, a lot of what he mentions as far as setting up your practice is sound. Even if you just have a craft practice, you can detach the spiritual elements from it and just focus on the chapters that he has about craft. Deborah Blake is another amazing author. Her Everyday Witchcraft. Oh, love her. Love her work so much. Deborah Lip as well. Just apparently anyone named Deborah in the witchcraft community. No, I say that in jest. Deborah Lip, her Magical Power for Beginners. That's a newer one. Ooh, I love it. It's definitely a great foundation for just talking about energy and power in general and what actually fuels your spells. So understanding the mechanics of it, of witchcraft, actually really helpful. And I wish it had been around when I started on my journey. Sadly, I had to get it some, 18 plus years in, but that is an amazing one. The Study of Witchcraft, also by Deborah Lip, another really great one. So as far as Scott goes, a lot of his books are very heavily Wiccan based, but as far as witchcraft and magic in general, his Earth Power book and the sequel, which is Earth, Air, Fire, and Water, which you heard me reference earlier, those two, pure magic. Love them so much. And there are dozens of other authors, you guys, dozens, who are just amazing. Obviously, The Spiral Dance by Starhawk, kind of essential reading if you're a European tradition witch, in my not so humble opinion. But there are a lot of books out there as well, so you can check those out. But start with the blogs. Start with websites. Witchbox is still around, by the way. And then YouTube channels. Honestly, this place where you're watching me right now is one of the best places to really sort of get an idea about witchcraft and what it's all about from people who actually practice it. Here's the downside to that. You're gonna come across channels where folks look like witches, maybe talk like witches, use the vernacular, where they're aesthetically witchy, as Avalon Cameron would put it, but aren't. There's really no meat there when you dive into the video. It's going to be regurgitated stuff. probably passages directly taken from the books that I had referenced, almost in their entirety. So again, that's where it comes into play, my saying to just use your best judgment. Go with your gut. If something doesn't sit right with you, if something someone says doesn't sit right, if just they don't sit right with you, don't watch their stuff. That's not your person. And when it comes to the witchcraft community, here's my second piece of advice. Find a community. Even if you're a solitary practitioner, find somewhere to go to get grounded. That was another struggle that I had starting out. And there were points in my practice where I wanted to give up, throw in the towel. I wanted to completely walk away. And the goddess dragged me back in, kicking and screaming, and said, I'm not quite done with you yet. But it was hard. It was hard not having anyone in my family that also practiced. My mom was super supportive, but my siblings really weren't and aren't so much even today. It was hard. I also didn't have any friends, that practiced. They were all either agnostic, atheist, or Christian, and did not practice witchcraft, did not believe in it. Staying grounded. Finding someone to connect to bounce ideas off of, or to even just, again, that's another spot where YouTube comes in and is really beneficial. Subscribing to a few channels, getting to know these content creators, getting to know practitioners from around the globe, and getting their point of view. So that when you're feeling stuck, when you're like, shit, I don't know where to go with this, I don't know if this is a thing, you can punch it into YouTube. Like, I don't know shit about cord cutting. Am I doing it right? Typing in cord cutting, which is the practice of energetically cutting energetic ties to things, people, situations, etc. You can just type it in, comes up. And again, don't necessarily just rely on the video that has the most views, because it may have the most views for the opposite reason that you think it does. It could be that a lot of the witchcraft community came to look at this video to be like, that's bullshit, and then moved on. So again, look at, kind of get the feel of who you resonate with, who, has a good vibe for you, meshes well with you, and your personality as well, because you're going to be listening to these folks a lot, right? And we want to make sure that the people that we invite into our lives, even if it's on YouTube, are the type of people that we want to hang out with. Because that's essentially what you're doing. You're watching all of these videos. You're hanging out with that person energetically. It's over the internet, but you and I are hanging out right now. I'm chatting with you. I've been chatting with you for the last, 35 minutes. And I want to make sure that I'm somebody that you would vibe with. Okay? And if I don't, please don't subscribe. Don't feel obligated to watch my stuff. Like, no. You owe it to yourself, okay, to take better care of yourself than that. If I'm not your person, don't invite that into your life. I don't want that for you. Okay? But if I am your person, hi, how are you? happy that you're here. And you watching my videos is you hanging out with me. So make sure that the folks that you're subscribing to are the ones that you want to hang out with. Okay, is basically all I'm saying. So check out those folks. See if they've got a video on what it is that you're looking at. You know, casting your first spell, setting up your astral temple, you know, different types of circle castings, whatever your topic happens to be. Okay, so blogs, books, and it doesn't have to break the bank, guys. You know, these book trading apps are pretty phenomenal, okay? I've heard great things about them. I'm just a lazy prat who has not jumped on that bandwagon yet. So I can't recommend any to you at this moment in time, but if I find some, I will get the information out there, I promise. So books, and then YouTube. Super great resource. Ultimately, though, it's my last piece of advice, okay? Because it's getting kind of long, and I want to wrap it up for you. Honestly, the most genuine magic that you will ever practice is the magic that you write for yourself. Cannot stress this enough. I got caught up in doing it right. And that was doing to a T the rituals that I would read in the books that I had, casting that spell verbatim with these specific ingredients, to the point where I would hold off casting a spell because I didn't have all the ingredients that the author listed. I was very much, because, you know, at the time that I cast my first spell, I was 14. You know, this was 1999. I may have actually been 13 at the time, now that I think about it. So I was very much caught up in the whole, you have to have all of this stuff to practice witchcraft, and you do not. You actually don't need a damn thing except you and your intention. That's it. These are the only two freaking things that you need, you and your intention. And I didn't realize that. I had no idea. Again, another drawback from starting off with Silver Ravenwolf. I'll stop. I won't throw any more shade. I'm digressing. But that's all you really need. Okay? So, yes, gather all the information, write down correspondences, write down associations, you know, gather from other people, and then go back and look at these associations, look at these correspondences, look at these spells, and say, okay, what would I do differently? You know, look at days of the week. Is it really necessary for me to only focus on protection on Saturdays? Is it necessary for me to focus on moon, feminine, and lunar magic on Mondays because it's associated with the moon? Look at how it is you would do things. What makes sense to you? Because one of the things that I talk about, even to my divination students, and this holds true for witchcraft as well, everybody grows up with different experiences and has different cultural backgrounds. Thus, we have different symbolism for things. So if I show two different people the picture of an apple, first person looks at the apple. They immediately think, okay, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. Health, vitality. Second person that I've shown was grown up or was raised being read Grimm's fairy tales at bedtime. They see an apple, they think, ugh, Snow White, poison apple, stay away. Betrayal. Those are two completely different contexts for the same photo, just based on these individuals' experiences. So, when it comes to associations, when it comes to writing spells, gathering ingredients, if that's your thing, if you want to do that, I am a very tangible person. So while I do practice sometimes strictly energetically, I will also gather herbs, light candles. My practice is very heavily laced with candle magic because that's just how I started my craft, and that's how we've continued it. It's worked for me so far. And that's the thing, do what works for you, okay? Modify stuff, tweak things. Feel free to change the outline of what it is that you're working with. Okay, make substitutions. If you don't like working with a particular herb because it's not native to the region that you live in, and you have to spend a fortune having it sourced from God knows where and shipped out to you, substitute that herb. There's gonna be a plant that is native to your area that you can source ecologically that will fit the bill for what you need. There's a list as long as my arm of herbs associated with abundance and luck. And there's a list twice as long of my arm that is of herbs associated with protection. You'll find something, I promise you. So don't be afraid to substitute and write your own magic, because it's going to be the most powerful if it comes from you. And it comes from things that resonate with you, things that make sense to you. If it makes sense in a particular spell to have the focal point of that be a rose quartz instead of a smoky quartz, switch that out. Do it. It's going to, you making that switch isn't what's going to hurt the spell. In fact, if you feel that strongly about it, going with the original way that it was written will actually hurt your magic more, because that's what you're going to be thinking about, is that this doesn't feel right, but I'm doing it anyway because it's written down in the book. That's when things are going to fall apart, because it's going to distract you from your intention. Okay, so do you, boo, is the last piece of advice that I'm going to leave you guys with. But if you feel called to the craft, come on down. We want you here. It's only going to serve to help you and enrich this community by having you start on this pathway, especially if you're continuously being called. Know that you have a place here. Okay? If your fear in taking that first step is because you don't have any support, been there, done that. You have a community that's waiting for you. We're here and we support you. Okay? We genuinely support you. I'm not saying that just talking out of my ass right now because it's almost midnight. We support you. And we want you here. Okay? The craft calls very specific people to it. You know, we don't all look alike, clearly. You know, no makeup, housewife attire. You see me out in the daylight, I look more like a soccer mom than I look like a witch, right? This is about the only giveaway, you know, that I have to what it is I believe in and what I do. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. The way that you dress, whether or not you like heavy metal or pop music, or both. None of that stuff is held to judgment when it comes to witchcraft. Witchcraft itself holds no judgment. Okay? And as I mentioned, it's as different to each and every one of us as there are differences in each and every one of us. No two witches practice exactly alike. So just take that first step. Start where you are. Read everything. I know it's like, oh, homework. Yeah, homework. You got homework. But read, and read with a discerning eye, and trust yourself. Okay? Do what feels right for you. Because at the end of the day, it's your practice. And you're the one doing it. And you've got to feel good about it. Okay? We're here. You got questions? Ask away. We support. We encourage. This is a very open community. Okay? The majority of us are very open and loving, and we love to have you here and support you in any way we can, okay? So I hope that this video was beneficial as much as it was long. I'm sorry, I'm still not at the stage yet where I'm really editing these things, so you're getting it stream of consciousness, raw, coming at you, and not in the best audio format, but can't really do anything about my webcam at the moment, so this is what you get. All right, guys, I will end it here. It was great chatting with you, and until I see you in the next video, blessed be.